What kind of love gives of itself so fully until it is completely used up so that it can produce love and life in others? It took death to produce life in me, the death of someone who I do not know, someone who did not know me, someone who never knew whose life they would save. I had just given birth to my fourth child, Hattie. She was perfect. Steve and I were so happy to bring her home from the hospital in time for Christmas Eve. But that night, I suffered my first heart attack while feeding Hattie. My family endured weeks of not knowing if I'd survive or not. I slept. They watched the machines that breathed for me, pumped and oxygenated my blood for me, did the work of my kidneys for me. They waited. They prayed. They placed my newborn beside me, hoping to stir me awake, hoping she'd at least know something of her mama. The whole city prayed. Entire churches prayed. I woke up. Against all odds, I survived. A pump ran my heart. I'd learned to walk again, eat again, learn to live with a heart run on batteries. I would need a new heart, but I had to heal first and prove that I could survive a transplant. 11 months later, on my 41st birthday, the phone rang and they said, "Kristen, we have a heart for you." I felt God's presence surround me in that moment. He gave this small, scared woman the courage of a lion. He helped me kiss my children goodbye and walk into the hospital to undergo heart transplant surgery. Today, I feel glorious. I am abundantly blessed. My family has been broken and put back together, stronger than before by the grace of God. I feel grateful beyond measure for my heart donor and the love and support of so many. I'm completely undeserving of this miraculous gift, all this love and kindness from so many, and yet I was given it anyway. I don't know whose heart beats within me and may never know. I will wait on my donor's family to respond to a letter I have written. They choose to receive or refuse it, and I will only know their choice if they choose to respond. I long to know them, to thank them for saving my life and for giving my children their mother back. But they may not want to know me, and that is something I must accept. For now, I will wait and pray for God's comfort as they grieve. There is a love that gives so fully, so completely, that gives life to this wife, this mother, and asks nothing in return. It is the most beautiful gift I have ever received. To me, it is a perfect demonstration of God's love for us.
Happy Easter. Those are powerful stories. Can you thank Anthony and Joe and Kristen one more time for sharing their stories? And by the way, the surgeon who performed Kristen's heart surgery is sitting right over there. He wouldn't want me to point it out, but he's right there. This is what we're here to celebrate today. We're here to celebrate the power of love, but not in the way that you might think. We are here to celebrate the death of love. Now, if that sounds like an oxymoron, it is. Celebrating the death of love just doesn't seem to go together, but it does. I mean, oxymorons shouldn't put us off. We use them all the time. I mean, part of our regular vocabulary includes things like, have you ever had jumbo shrimp? I mean, those two things shouldn't go together. You ever have anything that had freezer burn? Anything like that? Have you ever had anything that was bittersweet? Not chocolate, but bittersweet experience? Have you ever heard of a crash landing? I mean, crashing and landing are two different things. They shouldn't go together. Have you heard of even odds? Or an exact estimate? Or the thing that I find myself saying all the time, well, that was pretty ugly. Those things shouldn't go together. We live in a world that has no problem with complexity and contradiction and paradox. We just press on through it most of the time. For example, I mean, funnier people than me have noticed that we park on driveways and drive on parkways. You ever thought about that? Why is it that our noses run and our feet smell? Why is it that if you have a slim chance and you have the opposite, a fat chance, you both have no chance? I mean, why do we do that? I mean, think of this. If pro is the opposite of con, then is progress the opposite of congress? Just calm down a minute. It's not that funny. But this is funny. I mean, where do we get corn oil from? We get corn oil from corn. Where do we get vegetable oil from? Vegetables. Where do we get baby oil from? Everybody here know what an asteroid is? Everybody here know what a hemorrhoid is? They're like, no. Why don't we reverse those names? Easter Sunday, Dave, come on. Oxymoron. I thought about giving up sarcasm for Lent, but then I thought it would kill me. That's sarcastic, in case you didn't pick up on it. And Lent is a good practice. I'm sure there are some of you here who have made sacrifices for the 40 days before Easter. Well, hallelujah, today's the end. And we began our Easter season here at Riverbend 6 weeks ago with a study to prepare our focus for this day. It was a study of the last song that Jesus ever sang. It tells us in the book of Matthew, in the book of Mark, that at the end of the Passover meal, that the disciples sang a song, sang a hymn, and went out to the Mount of Olives. We know what that song was, because for almost 500 years since the return from exile of the nation of Israel, the priests had practiced singing 6 psalms called the Egyptian Hallel, as a celebration of God's deliverance during Passover. Those 6 psalms were Psalms 113 to 118, which means the last song that the disciples sang, the last song that Jesus sang before he went out to the Mount of Olives, and the chain reaction of events that would lead to his death began. He sang Psalm 118. Today, we conclude our journey through Psalm 118 on Easter Sunday with the last stanza, which begins with the most contradictory and profoundly paradoxical statement in the psalm. This is the day that the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. If you grew up going to Christian camps, you probably sang this song. It's kind of one of those, if you're happy and you know it, clap your hands songs. Those kind of songs that curmudgeons like me hated, because you're not the boss of me. You can't make me happy. I'm not happy and I don't know it. Well, this is one of those songs. This is the day that the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. You know what the oxymoron about that is? Is that Jesus sang this knowing he had been betrayed. Knowing he was going to be abandoned, knowing he was going to be arrested, knowing he was going to be falsely accused. He sang these words, knowing what was ahead for him in the remainder of his life would be humiliation, torture, and excruciating terminal pain. And he sang, "This is the day that the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it." If we know anything about Jesus of Nazareth, we know that he was never insincere and he was never sarcastic, by the way. So how did he do it? How is it possible when the shadows of darkness fall over our life? How is it even conceivable in the suffering and the struggle and the uncertainty and the difficulties of our lives? How is it even possible for us to lay our hands on the idea that in the midst of the darkness, we can say, "This is the day that the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it"? I think we can follow in his footsteps through the remainder of the psalm and find a path. Find a path through the dark, the path that gets us through what we can't get over. The first step on that path is that we're encouraged to be honest to God. There's a cathartic value in confessing and just sometimes just saying those things that we're afraid of, those things that we're anxious about, those things that we're frustrated with. And it's okay. God invites us to bring those things to him. This is the cathartic value of prayer. This is the cathartic value of expressing our anger and our frustration, even with God. I believe this is what the psalmist is saying in verse 25. Please, Lord, save us. Please, I beg you to make us successful. We not only express to God our fears, we express to God our desires, our ambitions, our dreams, those fulfilled and those unfulfilled. If we are going to journey through the darkness, if we are going to be able in any way to survive the difficulties of life and the darkest of days and have any chance of saying, this is the day the Lord has made, I will rejoice and be glad in it, we have to be honest about what we're experiencing and the load that we're carrying and the things that we're feeling. The second step on that path is to press in. I think we all define heroism the same way. Heroes are the people that run in when everyone else is running out. They're the ones who stay when everyone leaves. They're the ones who hang on when everyone else gives up. We know heroism when we see it. We know that the hero's journey means to behave courageously and heroically, means to set your face, to focus your gaze, to determine and double down on your resolve and not give up. We know this is what heroic behavior looks like. And this is what the psalmist sang about. This is what Jesus sang about on that Passover night. He talks about blessed is the one who comes. Blessed is the first responder who runs in when everyone else is in danger. These are the people who are standing in God's stead. They are standing in the gap. But it's the last part of verse 27 that's amazing to me. Jesus said, take the offering and take this sacrifice and bind it with cords to the altar. It reminds me of how Homer portrayed Ulysses as he was sailing past the sirens on the strait, and he had his men lash him to the mast that he might not give in to the insanity that was going to be invoked on him. This is what it means to set your face, to determine to not give up, to grit your teeth in the darkness, in the difficulties, to say, I will not give up. I will not quit. 30 years ago, I was overwhelmed. I was outmatched. I was well underwater. Professionally, I was a couple years into my first professional full-time pastoral assignment, and I was a full-fledged idiot. I was asked to resign 2 times in the first year. With cause, with good reason. Now, I didn't resign. I begged my way to keep the job, but I was so frustrating to the leaders of this small church in Richardson, Texas, that they were willing to say, you can't do this professionally. You're an idiot. My wife backed him up on this. But I wasn't only underwater professionally, I was also underwater in my family. We had our 3rd child. We had 3 preschool children. I was unprepared for this. I don't think any human being, I was still a child. I could not possibly know how to raise 3 young daughters. And we were hanging by a thread financially. We were living just above the poverty line, and we were committed to having Diane stay home with the girls. And so we were living hand to mouth, and genius Dave decides this would be a good time to finish my doctoral dissertation. And you know what my doctoral dissertation was on? Developing a theology of hope. In my studies that wound up taking 7 years, I came across a poem in 1988. And I've shared it over the years, and I've kept it, and I refer to it once in a while because it helps me to remember not to quit. I've kind of modified it for my own purposes, but this is a poem. I'm not sure who the author is, but it's called Press On. There are times in life that we all must face as we struggle and strain to run in the race. We scratch and we claw and we fight for success, but we fall and we fail to find what is best. When troubles surround us and our life is off track, low tide just means high tide's coming back. For in times just like these, in the hours before dawn, we remember the sunrise and keep pressing on. Anger, anxiety, remorse, and regret belong in the past, so forgive and forget. Don't throw in the towel, don't drop out of the race. The victory is won, and it's ours by His grace. Press on toward the mark, toward the prize, toward the goal. Set your face, fix your gaze, and get up when you fall. When dark times come and hard times we face, press in and press on and finish the race. For this is our call, to press on toward the mark, to never give up, and to press in to the dark. If we are going to survive with any kind of attitude and hope left intact, it begins by being honest. Secondly, it begins by not quitting, by pressing in and pressing on. And I think the third step in that journey to be able to say, this is the day the Lord has made, we will rejoice and be glad in it, is to hold on to our hope. I don't know how you feel about the power of positive thinking, but scientific studies, neurological studies, biological studies, psychological studies over the last 50 years have demonstrated there is a measurable difference between a person with a positive attitude and a person with a negative attitude. There's a significant biological impact on believing positively, thinking positively, not to mention you have way more friends. But whether or not you believe that there is power in positive thinking, I believe there is something even more powerful that sustains our hope. And it is the power of positive thinking. Now, I didn't go all redneck on you. I didn't just say, that's the power of positive thinking. Remember that Descartes guy? He said, I think, therefore I am. No, it's not. It's not the power of positive thinking. It's the power of positive gratitude. The power of positive thank you. Because I believe that our hope rests on the foundation of a perspective that says we have made it this far. We have gotten through by counting our blessings, by referring to and looking at the trace evidence of the accomplishments that we have made, even the things that we have endured. It's those things, it's counting up those things and being thankful that sustains our hope, that reaffirms our grip. This is how the psalm ends. The psalm ends with praise and exaltation of God. And verse 29, the final verse that Jesus sang before he went out to the Mount of Olives, was exactly the same, or is exactly the same as the first verse. Psalm 118, verse 1, and Psalm 118, verse 29 are identical. We thank the Lord for he is good. His faithful love endures forever. See, I believe he knew what he was singing about, even though hundreds of generations of practicing Israelites did not understand. He was singing about the death of love. And the only way to know a love that endures forever was to have a death that surrendered itself to, a love that surrendered itself to death on Friday and escaped from death on Sunday. We know that there is a love that is greater than death because we celebrate the day death died. Because death could not define it or end it. This is what Jesus was singing about, and I am convinced that this is the journey that we can take by being honest, by pressing on and pressing in, and by holding on to our hope. We can come to a point where we can say, this is the day that the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. They went out and they sang a hymn. And the hymn that they sang and the final words of it were a proclamation of the power of love. It may sound like an oxymoron to say that we celebrate the day death died. But we're used to that. We're used to living in a confusing and paradoxical world. I mean, we live in Austin, after all. Austin is a virtually schizophrenic city. I mean, have you driven on the streets of Austin recently? Who are all these people? Where did they all come from? Why are you out in the middle of the day on 360? Why does it take me 20 minutes to go 5 miles? And our city fathers have not helped us very much at all in the designing of the roads and the naming of the roads. I mean, for example, if you're out coming east on Bullock Hollow Road will bring you to the intersection of Bullock Hollow and 620 up in Northwest Austin. By going across the street, not by getting off of Bullock Hollow Road, you are now on 2222. Magically. You will drive down 2222 for a few miles, and it will magically turn into Northland Drive. If you keep driving east on 2222, it will then turn into Anderson, or not Anderson Lane, it will turn into, what is it? What is it? No, before Koenig, Allendale Drive. Then it turns into West Koenig Lane, then it turns into East Koenig Lane, then it turns into Highway 69, which is also Highway 290. All in the span of 10 miles, you've gone down 6 roads and never left the street you were on. Don't even get me started about where does Research Boulevard begin and end? I know it's somewhere up in the Arboretum, but is it the frontage road of 183? Is 183 the Research Boulevard? Or is Research Boulevard just an alley behind Rudy's? I don't know. You want to lose your Austin card really quick? Ask somebody where Manchacha Road is. And it's not just Austin. I mean, it's everywhere. I mean, there's some of the stupidest signs you can ever imagine. People erect and they must not think about it. Look at this sign. Is this helpful? What does that mean? How about this sign? Is this sign helpful to anybody? How about this one? I can't figure out this sign. What is it, an allergy warning? It's in the middle of the desert. There's a sign for congestion. And sometimes it's just funny. I mean, this one at Subway. We have fat-free lettuce. I like this one. This is my favorite one. Quit stealing our letters. And then there's this. Shoplifters will be prostituted. Really, Dave? Easter Sunday? Oxymoron. You know what the greatest oxymoron is? Love. Love doesn't follow the rules. Love does not do the predictable things. Love is a paradox. Love does not make sense. It is contradictory. It is an oxymoron. But it is the power that changes us. It is the power to change our lives, and the ultimate oxymoron is what we celebrate today. The day that death could not overwhelm love, that the love that died on Friday escaped from the grave on Sunday to prove to us that his love endures forever. This is what we celebrate today. This is what Anthony and Kristen and Joe are celebrating. This is why we come here, to celebrate the day love died. Happy Easter.